see if we are live. I think we should be up any time. Let's see here. Yep, we're live. Excellent. Welcome, everybody. I'm really happy that you guys are joining us today, Sunday afternoon, depending on your time zone. I am so excited to be part of our be doing a Facebook Live with two humans that I really admire, really respect. And when we first started talking about doing a Facebook Live on, the importance of family and the fact that it takes a village to navigate the journey of eating disorders. Bonnie is one of my favorite speakers of all time and people to connect with. And of course, Cherie, who so many of you guys know as so many things, family advocate, survivor. But before we start getting into questions, I just wanted to share a little bit about each of you and then give you a moment to just say hi and to, welcome our crowd. So Bonnie Brennan is the Regional Managing Director, Clinical Director of Eating Recovery Center and has been part of ERC since its inception. She plays a huge instrumental role as far as I'm concerned. She is Superwoman and really does a beautiful job working with families, connecting people to treatment. So Bonnie, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your Sunday afternoon with our community.
Absolutely, we're excited to be here.
So happy to have you. And Cherie is first and foremost a mom, an advocate, a survivor. She sits on the board for the Alliance and is the chair of our Family Action Committee. She's also the founder and one of the moderators in the Eating Disorder Family Support Network groups, including the Mom to Mom group. She's very active in the eating disorder community and has been involved in so many things. Cherie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, thrilled to have you guys both. So we actually put out a call for questions, and it was amazing how many questions we got. So if you guys are ready, I'd rather just get the ball rolling and start. One that I got a lot, and this is not so much parents, but it's more partners, is how do I assist my partner who has an eating disorder? Every time I try to get them help, they get angry with me and tell me to leave them alone. So Bonnie, I would love to start with you. What would you say to the partner of someone that is experiencing an eating disorder?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's always a balance of being willing to have that person get angry. Of all the years that I've treated folks, when they get to recovered period or get close to recovered period, what they say is they remember those people that had the courage and the strength to stay in it with them, even when they got really angry or said mean things or had a meltdown. They do remember your attempts at trying to help, and are very grateful for that. So I would say hang in there. I would rather somebody be angry at me than not alive.
100%.
Disorders are life-threatening, and if that's what it takes to keep them well and get them to a place where they get some help, I would do it.
That's so important. And how would you suggest broaching that conversation? And I think this can go with a partner. It could also go definitely with a parent, a child. How do you start that conversation? Because for so many people, they are so worried about making the person that's struggling with an eating disorder very upset, creating more friction. So how do you start that conversation?
Yeah, it's really hard because a lot of us are dealing with our own shame and self-blame or hopelessness about the situation. And people are more willing to listen when you go with what you are experiencing. So it might take a little bit of your own inner reflection before having this conversation, and then coming forth with, hey, when I see you in what looks like pain or that you're really struggling, I feel really scared. I feel worried. I want to be able to help and I don't know what to do. I care about you. I love you. Reminding them that this is really a place that you are feeling connected and loving of them rather than going in, sometimes when we go in, we think we need to be the most competent person in the room or have all the answers about how to talk about an eating disorder, but that's not what folks need. That's what professionals are for, right? So if it's your loved one, your biggest strength is your chemical connection with them, your neurobiological connection. If you're a parent, if you're a caregiver, that's stuff that you're wired to care about each other. So going in with the feelings and the emotions about how you are handling the situation and how much you care about them really helps.
So what I really heard a lot of is, I heard you say a lot of like how you yourself were feeling, and the use of the word I a lot, like I have seen and I care. Cherie, how was that experience for you when you were first navigating this journey with your daughter?
Absolutely. I mean, it's terrifying. As a parent, you're trying to figure out what's happening. You don't understand. All you know is that things are changing. And, in our situation, I mean, I was taking my daughter to medical professionals, to hospitals, and was being turned away. And it was just confirming the fact to her that there was nothing wrong. And so I was navigating that obstacle too. And it required me to be in a place of, I love you, I'm terrified, I'm afraid I'm going to lose you. I'm seeing tremendous weight loss, it's scaring me. And speaking from the standpoint of, I'm your mother, and it's my job to keep you safe and well, and I cannot stand in silence because I'm so scared. And we're going to get you the help that you need. And standing in conviction, because that conviction conveys the urgency and the seriousness of the situation. And when we sort of let it drop and walk away, we're essentially telling them that there's nothing wrong. So it's that conviction and that determination that really conveys to our loved one that there is something wrong. This is serious. And they do try to push us away as parents because they're going to attack and direct venom at the ones that love them the most, and when we shrink away, it essentially tells them they're not sick, because if I was really sick, they wouldn't be shrinking away. They wouldn't be cowering in the corner, with their sort of their head poked in the shell like a turtle. You know what I mean? Instead, they would be standing here convicted. I love you. I'm terrified. I'm afraid that I'm seeing this, this, and this, and we're going to do everything.
I absolutely. And on that path, we got a question. Someone asked, my spouse and I do not agree. He doesn't think that this is a big deal and doesn't believe in eating disorders, so he won't back me up in anything that I do. I've definitely seen this with partners. I've seen this with parents. And, for me, like instantaneously, as someone of lived experience, right away, I turn around and I think, well, when I was in my eating disorder, the person who didn't believe that the eating disorder was a thing, quote unquote, that's who I would absolutely go, because for me, that would be the crack in the armor. So Bonnie, how do you navigate this when either, you don't have, like, if you are a parental unit and your co-parent doesn't believe in eating disorders or doesn't think it's a big deal? How do you even start that navigation?
Yeah, that's very frustrating and not uncommon. We all have our defenses, right? And as a parent, myself, I have kids, and it's hard for me to see where their struggles are sometimes. And especially if you've lived with somebody for a long time and maybe their eating disorders slowly got worse over time, we accommodate. As parents, we don't see the difference happening right before our eyes, and like all kinds of reasons come to our heads, oh, well, it's this, and if they get through this stage, it'll be better, and it's the stress at school and whatnot. So first, I want to validate that it's very easy to be in the place of not wanting to believe in an eating disorder. And then for the partners that are, or the husband-wife team, or whoever it is, when you've got that dichotomy, I would say to get out of the power struggle, maybe using the power of a professional to educate and help understand. Sometimes it takes a different point of view even for my kids when we're doing homework together. Sometimes it takes the teachers better at actually explaining the problem than I am. So when you're getting caught in a fight about it, best to go to a third party and get some information that way. If your person's a reader, maybe you could just leave a book lying around that will explain things a little bit differently or from a perspective that they might be more open to hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Cherie, I'm sure, I mean, you've definitely supported, so many families over the years. And I know that for me, all my work at the Alliance and all of our friends and family support groups, so often we'll see one part of the parental team come in and just say, so often, and I absolutely do not want to gender stereotype here in any regard, but a lot of times we hear, dad wants to just be the fixer. Like, what do we need to do? Fix it, get it done, move it along. We go to treatment's done, we're done. Fingers, like it's done. But we've also had to help families that have not validated the seriousness of eating disorders as well. So how have you seen people navigate it? What has been helpful for them?
Well, I mean, so my husband and I went through that ourselves. I mean, I was the one that was taking it head on, going to doctor's appointments and all of that. And my husband was literally doing nothing. And I was becoming very angry. And we see this a lot with families where, one spouse is doing all the heavy lifting and the other one is sort of standing in silence. And I was becoming very angry and starting to understand, why families get divorced and why this happens, because you feel so isolated and so alone. And, with my husband, I finally realized that it was fear. He was actually paralyzed in fear because he had always been a fixer. He did not know what to do. And this actually terrified him. And so the best advice that I can give families is absolutely get a family therapist. That's what we did, that specialized in eating disorders. And it helped get us aligned so that we were on the same page, because you have to be a solid brick wall. If there is any sort of crack in that wall, the eating disorder will slide right through and will work the two of you against each other. And basically the eating disorder ends up running the whole family. Yep. and meanwhile, everybody else is warring and standing in silence. And so absolutely the best advice is get a family therapist and be on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I would probably also share is if you have access to a friends and family group, to definitely, definitely encourage to, for you and your loved one to go, your spouse to go, if you will. I think that so often, and I see this with individuals that are experiencing eating disorders as well, is that, I'm not that bad. I don't need that. I don't need that extraness. And I will tell you, one of the things that I love so much about the groups, for example, that we hold at the Alliance is when you get into the room and when people start speaking their same language and will share same experiences, and you don't have to say anything. They just share an experience and you're like, holy crap, like they must have just been in my house when I've been like in a knockdown, drag out fight with my kid, trying to get them to nourish themselves or to do X, Y, and Z. It can be so important. So I have to echo both Cherie and both Bonnie for you talking about the necessity of getting a clinician, a family therapist that specializes in eating disorders. And that's definitely something that, we can absolutely help with at the Alliance. Not even a question. We have a very comprehensive referral database there. We've gotten so many questions, so I really want to make sure that we can get to as many as possible. And for those individuals that are joining us today, if you have questions as well, please put them in the comment box. I will try to get to as many as possible. This was a big one. We've gotten it from several people, is what do we do about family members who continue to make comments about my loved one's body shape and size, what they eat, what they don't eat? One of the people said it's been really nice in a sense of this whole shelter in place, because it's sort of given us an opportunity to get away from that a little bit. But Bonnie, how do you navigate that? Because we can control what we can control and we cannot control what we can't.
Absolutely. This was my whole life, actually. As a child, I was like the big girl in the family, and I had a whole family that was focused on weight and size and shape. And it's really painful, even just off the cuff, like, oh, you're looking so much better. Might actually be hurtful to the person inside. So I think what's really been helpful, like in my life and for folks that I've helped, is to be that person. It's you're helping your loved one through this, is to be that person that takes the family member aside and says, listen, this is not helpful. I need you to edit the conversation. You might not have to agree with me on this, but you're causing pain here. And maybe we can, if it's like sometimes there's an older family member that just keeps talking, and sometimes you have to have like the plug on the ear kind of symbol, or even if it's at a family dinner, just to say, okay, we're changing the subject. In a treatment center, we do this all the time at a table or a meal. Somebody might start to drift into comments about food or body size. So we have a way of politely saying, like, everybody at the table is aware that this is a painful conversation, and then let's switch. And, developing your own code for that can be helpful with that person.
Can you give us an example of what that means, like developing your own code, for example?
So it could be something that you say, or maybe some kind of body language that you do. So it might be like red light conversation here, or let's move on. Or even if it's really, really a obvious, painful comment, to just say, okay, that's not appropriate. Let's move on to the another topic of conversation here. And it might happen over, now we're in isolation. It might actually happen over the internet. A lot of people are doing your family Zoom calls. One thing that could be helpful for those who do have an awareness that there's an individual who's in recovery is to set some ground rules for the conversation.
I love that.
And also that teaching each other that rather than saying, oh, you look great, or you look healthy, or, to say things like, I'm so glad to see you. I've missed you. I really care about you. Oh, your voice is, touching me inside. And oftentimes we're just nervously saying body focused comments.
Absolutely, Cherie. I would love to hear some feedback as to how you navigated it, how you have other families who you work with navigate it, because I appreciate, Bonnie, you talking about like the code word. My husband and I actually had a code word early in my recovery, and our word was pancakes, which was sort of funny and ridiculous all at the same time, but like it was a really easy way to like bring it into the conversation. Like, do you remember those really good pancakes that we had? Or, you know what, I think I'm gonna have to go to the store after X, Y, and Z to get stuff for pancakes. And it was so great for us to be on the same wavelength. So I cannot stress enough the importance of a code word. But Cherie, I would love to have you share as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we navigated the same thing, especially at Thanksgiving and Christmas and holiday events. And I would have a conversation with family members that were attending ahead of time. Please, let's not discuss the food. Let's not discuss the physicality. Let's try to focus, this holiday on gratitude and being connected and what are we thankful for, versus always on, oh, you look better, you look like you're gaining weight, and those types of comments, which really aren't productive. And we had the same thing, like sitting next to a safe person, a buddy system, so that if things went in a direction and it was going south quickly, that you could actually let your buddy know, just maybe by a squeeze of the hand or something, that they needed some sort of support, redirection, possibly leave the table, change the conversation. But I do think educating family members prior to those events is really critical. And we can't, especially when they're in the process of refeeding and they're sort of in a risky situation, it's really important. But, then as they're navigating through the journey, our loved ones do have to learn how to navigate those conversations and how to walk through them. But initially, certainly we want to try to do everything we can to protect them, just like you would with, so if someone had just gotten out of rehab for alcoholism, and you wouldn't have alcohol while sitting at the table. The same thing. Yeah.
You would hope.
Yeah. You would hope.
Exactly. You really hope. No, I really love
I was
that. Go
just
ahead, Bonnie.
thinking too, like it can be helpful to be prepared with a couple conversation starters, like oh, has anybody watched Tiger King or what?
Yeah.
Something that could completely sway the conversation.
Yeah.
And I mean, who doesn't want to talk about Tiger King anyways, right? So I mean, so we got this question on our Facebook page. What if my loved one refuses to get help because they are blinded by their body dysmorphic disorder, depression, anxiety, and other comorbidities? You know, where it's either that they can't, like, and I will say they can't see the necessity of the fact that they really need treatment, that the eating disorder, that the body dysmorphic disorder has really, you know, put on those colored glasses where they can't see that they truly really never, like, that they either don't need it, or if I'm going to be very, very transparent, they don't believe that they deserve it in a sense. So how do you help your loved one navigate that journey when they feel like either they're not sick enough, that they don't need it, that they don't deserve it? So I don't know, Bonnie, if you want to start.
Yeah, sure. That's, you know, this really hard conversation and so painful. And really the thing that works the best is for you to have a little bit of ambiguity about what will happen. So I like to say, when I'm setting a boundary, I like to say the words, my expectation is this, but I don't give the right away. I won't give and if you don't do it, this will happen. I set the expectation first, give the person a little bit of space to see if they'll rise to the occasion or meet me with the expectation, or maybe I have to explain the expectation. For example, you know, if they are struggling and you're seeing them in the house, my expectation is that you're working on getting more food in or staying out of the bathroom right after the meal, and leave it at that. And then usually what people will do, folks with eating disorders are so intelligent and resourceful, and they will come back usually to the conversation with some kind of idea if you give them the space for that. There are also times when it's an emergent situation and, you know, emotions are high, or the you know, things are escalated, where you might have to pair that expectation with, and if you're not able to do this right now, like keep yourself safe, or, you know, like get up and we're going to the hospital kind of situation, that you have to tell them what the next step is. But in general, I would say start with setting what your expectations are. See if they can rise with solutions and problem solve with you, before then you have to go to the next step of getting in there and implementing. And always the guideline is, if somebody is at risk to harm themselves or become medically unstable so that they need the hospital, that's when you cross the line and you step in and you don't listen anymore to any words or excuses they might have to say. Get them help, call 911, drive them to the hospital, whatever might need to be done. Does that make sense?
100%.
Absolutely.
Cherie, I know that, you know, this is a topic that you help families navigate all the time, and I can probably say that you experienced on some level yourself as well in your personal experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for families to realize, especially with anorexia, that often they don't have the awareness of how compromised they are. And there's actually a psychological term called anosognosia, which is a lack of insight and awareness of how truly sick they are. So I think as family members, you know, absolutely we start how Dr. Brennan said, and then meanwhile, we're assessing the situation, what's happening, what sort of support they're getting. And it's important for family members to treat this the exact same way they would if their loved one were diagnosed with cancer. And that's how I tell families to do it. You need to pretend, particularly, that your loved one has brain cancer, because oftentimes with brain cancer, there are mood and personality changes. There are changes in cognitive function. There can be lack of awareness. And so, you know, if they are decompensating, if they're refusing to leave college, like all these different things, and get the help and support that they need and deserve, you have to navigate exactly the same way you would if they had cancer. and they were refusing chemo treatment or treatment at all. And you're doing it because you love them and because you want to get them the care that they need. And it's an incredibly loving conversation with a lot of empathy. And I had to practice that because I'm a very determined person, and I sort of can be like a bulldozer. And I had to learn to, come from a place of compassion in my tone and say, I know this is difficult, I'm terrified, I'm worried, this is what I'm seeing, and we have to get you the care. And really come from, like I said, the same words we would have if they were experiencing cancer.
That's awesome, Cherie. I totally agree. To say things like, it's not an option for you
Right.
to continue doing this, or I will not let you continue to spiral. Yeah, I love that metaphor.
Absolutely. And I think it applies to everything, whether they're in school, in college, have a job, everything. If they had stage 4 brain cancer and they were decompensating, we would not wait for them to choose. We would do everything we had to do to get them the care they need and deserve. This is not an option. This is my job as your mother to keep you safe and well. Don't ask me to stand in silence. I can't.
I love the comparison because I have to say that, for a lot of people that are experiencing eating disorders, and I think for the community at large, if you will, is people see anything that's more psychological. Well, because it's above the neck, you should be able to control it. You should be able to fix it. You should be able to have enough want or need or interest. And I will tell you, I was absolutely one of those people that was like, if I wanted it enough, I'd be able to do this. I don't need the help of the team. I can navigate this. The truth of the matter is I could absolutely not navigate it on my own. I wasn't supposed to be able to fix it on my own. And it wasn't until I had a therapist many years later that said to me, if you had diabetes, you couldn't will your blood sugars to normalcy, right?
Right.
You need meds, you need all of these things. You need guidance, you need a team. And so I have to tell you, I think that's so important for even a lot of families or loved ones, if you will, that are like, I don't understand why, my loved one went to treatment, they got out of treatment, they should be fixed. So often, I've had a lot of members in my personal family and friends that have experienced cancer, and they just don't get one round of chemo, right? They have to do various rounds of chemo. And if you stop halfway through chemo because you're seeing a little bit of amelioration, what's going to happen? The cancer is going to come back, which is why we need access to care, which is why we need to get the treatment we deserve. So I think that that's so true in so many ways, not only for loved ones supporting the person going through eating disorders, but for the person that's struggling with the eating disorder themselves, that number one, they did not create this. This is not something someone chooses. I will tell you, with everybody I've talked to in my life that has experienced an eating disorder, they never said, it's a beautiful day in sunny West Palm Beach, Florida, I think I'm going to have anorexia nervosa today or binge eating disorder today. And it's not that, I'm going to be done and it's just going to totally be done. So I think that offers so much guidance for not only family members, but individuals that are navigating this journey as well. So I really appreciate both of your feedback. So it's so incredibly true. Something that Cherie, you started talking about, which leads me to my next question, is I have no ways to set boundaries on my loved one. They work, they have their own money, they're over the age of 18. What do I do? How do I navigate that situation? And I know that for some people, if there is some type of a carrot, if you will, if you're still paying for college, if you're paying for rent, you have something there. But what if this human is completely financially independent? How do you navigate that journey?
I mean, it comes back to that cancer analogy, and the same thing if they had a heart condition or diabetes or any of that. Age is completely irrelevant. And for some reason, when it comes to eating disorders, we hold space for age. But yet, if they had heart disease or a birth defect or cancer or diabetes, we wouldn't even be considering age. We would just automatically go to the place of, I love you. I can't stand in silence. We have to get you the care you need. I'm not going to lose you. I love you too much. We're going today or tomorrow, or, you know, and especially like, do not take no for an answer. And we hold space. We wait for them to say, okay. And that's the thing which sends them the message that they're not that sick. And it's funny because I've talked to, you know, many adults on this journey who've been in their 30s, and I've asked them, like, how come you never got treatment, or how come you never got the care they did? And they always tell me the same thing, because no one ever told me I had to. No one ever made me. And they said essentially that was telling me I wasn't that sick, because if I was really sick, they would have stood in the conviction, they would have made me go, they would not have accepted no, and they would have done absolutely everything to get me there. And I mean, it's our conviction. That's what it comes down to every single time.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, but I'm thinking about where I'm treating eating disorders in Colorado. We actually have the ability to treat folks involuntarily. And it's really surprising and sad to me how many folks with eating disorders actually believe they're choosing, they want us to choose that for them. Like, because the eating disorder is so strong, they need the legal system to tell them, you have to recover. And it's only then that they let themselves start to recover, when it's against the law, so to speak, to have this eating disorder refuse treatment. And it's a sad reality. I think it's, you know, it's part of what happens in the brain, is that the brain gets hijacked by eating disorder thoughts. And there's, you know, where the person can be very high functioning, doctor or lawyer in Harvard, you know, medical school, whatever. There's this spot in the brain about food and body where their account is not reliable. And a lot of times folks get stuck in the, you know, the policing, did it happen, did it not happen? I always say, get out of police mode. The only thing you can rely on in terms of when somebody's brain has been hijacked by the eating disorder is objective evidence. So, you know, get the weight, actually see the food being eaten, you know, get labs, so that, you know, if there's purging happening, or use your medical professionals, something that, you know, your dietitians and therapists and doctors can help you with, so that you're not in that, because sometimes these conversations get steered into, you know, I don't have an eating disorder, of course I don't, and the lying, or the, I like to call it the inability to accurately self-report. And that's so hard, and so hard as a family member to navigate, like, oh my gosh, I really want to believe them. What do you think is happening? But our energies are best spent and get the objective evidence and understand, like Cherie is saying, and also don't underestimate the power of a family intervention. There are a lot of good interventionists. If you need that kind of muscle, so to speak, behind you to get somebody into treatment, I would definitely get somebody who's a eating disorder interventionist. It's a little bit different of an intervention than a substance use interventionist.
Sure.
But that could be an option for folks as well.
So something I just wanted to bring up is someone actually put a comment, which was so right on, and I'm so appreciative that they did. Is this, you know, how we talked about that my loved one isn't able to make their own health decisions right now, and there's like this individual said, I'm concerned it's going to be misinterpreted as then us, the help, like the caretakers, saying I need to force them to eat, as opposed to, which is really harmful dynamic between this person and their spouse for a very long time. And I'm so appreciative that comment was posted, because I think, and I would love for you guys both to clarify this, is that what we're saying is not to become food police. What we're saying is to really put our foot down for the necessity of treatment. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, unless you're doing a specific type of treatment modality where family does become, in a sense, the food monitor, we really need to leave the whole food policing, quote unquote, which I hate that word anyways, to the professionals. But we just need to mandate that our loved ones get access to care. And I think that for so many of us, I know for me in particular, my fear of, you know, loved ones getting involved was, are they going to ask me what I'm eating, how I'm eating, how often I'm eating? And so much a part of me was like, it's not about the damn food. You guys need to get off of the damn food. And I also understand why they needed to do that. So, Bonnie, I would love for you to even just clarify that statement, because I'm so grateful that this was asked, because I think so many people have this concern or this question.
So the question was, again, can you repeat the question, Joanna?
The question was about just the difference between like that when someone's in their eating disorder, they don't really have the ability to see how sick they are,
Yep.
and as opposed to then that being translated into, I need to be food police. I need to monitor everything that they do.
Yeah, so the food policing is, so where the trap can be is that you then get into a power of wills dynamic. And your job as the caregiver is to be the emotional boundary setter and supporter, not necessarily the expert on what food should go in and how much of it should go in, until you've been to professionals that have trained you how to do that. And family-based treatment is one of those modalities where the professionals can help you with that, but I would start with helping them to get to treatment. And there's also a misconception as we're sheltering in place right now that you have to like not go to treatment, but actually behavioral health centers are one of those essential services that we want that stay open while other folks are not working and sheltering in place. And before somebody is needing an emergency room or a psychiatric stabilization, hospitalization, we are really encouraging you to try to get to folks to, even if it's outpatient therapy, a lot of clinicians are doing their video conferencing and telemedicine. The rules have lifted across the country on how we're doing this, and insurance is actually paying for these where they might not have in the past. Get that help with the providers so that you don't become the food police, because that can be an awful situation to be in. And eating disorders thrive in secrecy and isolation. And I've always said that somebody who is in their eating disorder, in terms of what their eating disorder thoughts are, they're going to know how to outsmart you and outsneak you, because that's not how your brain works, right? You haven't spent time in an eating disorder. So get them to the professionals so that we can give you a break with that.
Absolutely, Cherie. I don't know if you have any feedback on that question. I see that you do, so I'm just.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm talking from the perspective of a lot of families are doing this with adolescents, and they are doing FBT, and they're using sort of a plate by plate approach, but they're essentially feeding them the food they need, and then they're encouraging them to eat with love and compassion, and it's not so much like the food police, it's more, well, unfortunately, when you're doing FBT, you're wearing many hats, but essentially you're feeding them the food they need. And you have to take a food first approach, because that's the only thing that's going to heal their brain, is getting renourished. And so it is a fine balance where you can lovingly give them the food they need and support them through it. And it doesn't have to be from an aggressive place, an angry place, or anything like that. Simply, I'm your mother. I know how to nourish you. Trust me that this is the food you need, and take a bite. And so it's kind of balancing both of those. And it is really nice when they are in a residential treatment center and you're not having to do that at home. But many families are,
Absolutely.
have to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that this also, it also comes back to like, it's obviously a different dynamic when you have, a child versus a spouse.
Right.
And I think that that's where you totally have to lean into really the, using like the foresight from your, family therapist, and taking direction from your family therapist, and not just waiting till like the actual meal to start getting into it. Is planning ahead, and really, in family therapy saying, when this happens, this is how I would like for you to respond, and having that all set up beforehand. Because like for me, like, and I say this all the time, like, even things like coping tools, right, or helpful coping mechanisms. Like if you just wait till the house is on fire, those coping mechanisms are not going to work.
Right.
We really need to be incorporating them into our everyday life and utilizing them. So for me, I'm really in the belief system is, have these conversations before you're sitting at mealtime.
Absolutely.
So that someone who's struggling with an eating disorder, experiencing an eating disorder, can say to their partner, when you're sitting there, like scrutinizing everything that I'm eating, looking at me, like I will tell you, I still remember my mom was like really the person who was very helpful for me in my recovery. Every time I would take a bite, she would make like a little noise. She'd be like, and I would think like I have an audience doing the thing that I don't want to do, or holding her, and I want to say that loved ones are the best thing ever in this journey. So I really want to say this. And I think utilizing that opportunity in a family therapy session, so laying out the groundwork so that it's not in the middle of like a heated experience that you're trying to navigate the journey.
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
I was just going to say, it's like a balance of validating and setting boundaries. So to just say, I know how hard this must be. I know this is really scary. I can only imagine that inside, this is the last thing that you want to be doing, and take another bite. And I'm here with you. And we're going to get through this together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm standing by your side, and manage those expectations up front and have the conversations long before the meal ever happens. And the validation of, I know pizza is scary because you haven't had it for a long time, and because your eating disorder is telling you not to eat it, and because it's your biggest fear food, and take a bite. And and it's done with love and compassion, because they already have enough noise in their head. And when we start screaming and we start getting angry, all that does is light the house on fire. You know what I mean? Like, calm evokes calm. So, coming from a calm, compassionate place can really help.
And I think one thing, as I start to shift, as we actually start to, I have a few more questions to ask. I can't believe we're almost at the end of time. One thing that's really, really important to me, and definitely at the Alliance, is to really reiterate the point that eating disorders do not have any look. They don't have any gender. They don't have any sexual orientation. They don't have any age. They do not discriminate between any of those. So I think it's one of the questions that we actually got this from an individual who's experiencing an eating disorder for their loved ones, is I'm sheltering in place with loved ones that do not believe I have an eating disorder because I don't have that stereotypical look of what an eating disorder looks like. How can I effectively share with them that eating disorders don't look a certain way, they don't act one way, if you will, and get the support that I need, and to stop making comments about my body, because I do live in a higher weight body, and they're not taking my eating disorder seriously. So, Bonnie, I would love for you to start with that question, because I can so relate to that, because that definitely was my experience as well. So yeah, I would love for you to share some input.
Well, for the folks out there who are sharing that experience, I just want to say first that I'm sorry you're going through that. It's really difficult and really hard when you're not feeling understood, or people aren't seeing just because your body isn't the thing that they see, right? And it's very painful on a soul level to feel misunderstood in that way. And in terms of what do you do to help folks understand, I think that maybe putting some language to the thoughts that are going on in your head, that being consumed with, that's where eating disorders don't discriminate, right? It's the content in the brain. Here's what I'm spending my time thinking about, and I'm so scared about X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that you do with your food and your body. And helping them to know that, that there's a balance with eating disorders, that oftentimes the eating disorder has helped maintain distance from another problem. Like eating disorder might have helped with anxiety or depression symptoms, and that if you were to stop doing what you do with food in your body, that is also going to come up for you too, right? So it's oftentimes it's a problem that solves another problem. So perhaps putting some language, if you're aware, if you have any awareness about what that might be, using emotional terms can help folks to understand when they're not seeing what it is that's happening for you externally, and talking about what's going on for you inside.
I love that. Cherie, do you have any feedback?
Well, I mean, I'm just sitting here. I can't even imagine how scary it would be for someone to be experiencing an eating disorder and sharing it with their family or their friends and not get the validation and the compassion and the support they were hoping for. And it just breaks my heart. I mean, eating disorders are not a choice. And they're no different than, like I said, experiencing heart issues or cancer. And you want your loved ones to react the same way they would if you were telling them, I've just been diagnosed with brain cancer. That same attention, that same love, and the same support and understanding and conviction. And it just, I mean, and families don't know what they don't know. And so they don't understand oftentimes about eating disorders. So it is getting educated and learning that, you know, early intervention and treatment is critical, and doing everything you can to get your family that education. And like an Alliance Friends and Family group are asking them, you know, I know you don't understand, but would you be willing to attend this group? Here's a group that will help educate you about eating disorders. And, you know, here's a Facebook support group, and here's a book, you know, those types of things to try to help your family gain some understanding. Difficult situation.
Yeah, and I think that this is where education comes into play. And I really appreciate some of the comments that we've been getting. Is this is not just loved ones, it's doctors, it's the community, and it's really one of the driving forces that we tackle at the Alliance, because with less than 20% of all healthcare providers given any education on eating disorders, I mean, we have to start breaking away from these archaic stereotypes that eating disorders only look a certain way or they only affect a certain gender. Like, we have to get away from that. And I think the one thing that that really resonated internally with this question is, it's so difficult to be seen and heard or you feel like it's very difficult to be seen and heard when you are experiencing an eating disorder, and then not being validated when you finally are asking for that help and support, and then being in a situation where it's actually triggering for your recovery. I've shared this a lot, in a lot of like the check-in groups and support groups that I help co-facilitate. Is I have a family member that, 21 years out of recovery, every time he sees me, it's a comment about my appearance. It's not necessarily so much weight related anymore. It's hair, it's skin, it's this and that. And this is someone who, with my team, I really went through the list of, is this healthy for me to have this human in my life? Yes or no? And for me, it was yes. And it caused me to have to put down some ironclad boundaries that have literally tested my limits in ways that I can't even describe. It's just been, and I have to, every single time a comment is made, I will not talk about that. And if he continues, I have to walk away. And I'm definitely grateful and want to lean into my privilege of being in the recovery that I'm in, where it's not constantly triggering for me. But all I want to say is, for that person who asked that question, please know that we hear you and we see you, and that there is a community that's very supportive and that's here to support you. And anything that we can do to help support and educate your loved ones, please definitely reach out to the Alliance. So I have two last questions just to share. A parent asked, does anyone ever get better from this? This has been going on for such a long time. And I feel like I've heard that question personally so much, but y'all know how I feel about it. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Bonnie, how would you answer this question?
Absolutely. Recovery is totally possible. Yep. Now, it doesn't necessarily happen in the timeline that we want it to, or the person wants it to who's recovering, but it's absolutely possible. And I've seen folks with decades in their eating disorder who I thought, walking out the door, I was like, oh, I don't know, really turn the corner. And for some, it's a long, slow process of taking it, baby stepping it through the whole, years and years. And then for others, it can be like a light switch goes off and they get it and they figure it out. And even, that doesn't mean that it's not hard. They just get more determined to walk through the pain of it. But the option of having an eating disorder is not eliminated from the brain. So I just want to make folks aware that the only thing that you can do to unlearn a behavior is to add more options in the brain. The brain is additive, it's not subtractive. I wish we could just like take it out of the brain, right? Take that option for an eating disorder out of the brain. So for those of you who are supporting somebody who's gotten to recovered period or has gotten a good stretch in recovery, just know that when life throws us stuff that is out of our available coping skills, the stuff that takes us to our knees with pain or sometimes even amazement, an eating disorder thought could sneak in there as an option to deal with the situation. And so being willing to not freak out that they have maybe an eating disorder thought or temptation to use behaviors again, that you're there to support. And I would say that, the recovery is absolutely possible. Never give up hope, and allow the person the journey that they need to take in order to get there.
So well said, Cherie.
Absolutely. I mean, recovery is absolutely possible. I mean, when we started this journey, actually the very first family session my husband and I ever went to, they told us it would be a 7 to 10 year journey, and that it may not be, 7 to 10 years of pure hell and treatment, but that it would ebb and flow. And I've kind of learned that recovery is a journey. It's not a sprint. It's not a marathon, because those have a known beginning and a known end. It's a journey that's really not defined by time and has, many twists and turns and moguls in the road. And recovery is absolutely possible. And it requires diligence. It requires, getting nutritionally rehabilitated and doing the work and being diligent to get yourself the support and care that you need and deserve. And in times of change or transition or stress or a pandemic, things can happen, and you can start, experiencing thoughts and behaviors, but there comes the diligence. It's getting back on that, horse and getting yourself the support that you need and deserve. And do not doubt it for 1 minute that it's possible. And those blips in the road are not failures. They're just simply, you need more support.
That's so incredible. And one thing that I share with people all the time is that, you don't recover to utopia, you recover to life. And life is filled with good moments and bad moments. And, Bonnie, thank you for even saying the fact that, you are going to have these negative thoughts. You are going to have these urges every once in a while, but that does not mean that person's, outside of recovery or has relapsed, because we all have that negative internal voice, right? And one of the most amazing things that recovery has given me is this opportunity to actually, when I hear that negative voice start going, is to say, I hear you and I see you, and I'm going to choose to do something else, is exactly what you said, Bonnie, which I so love. And I think I'm going to create like a t-shirt that says like the brain is like, like we add things to our brain. We don't subtract, because like for me, that's been so true, is that I still, like every other human out there, will get these negative thoughts, and it's like really realizing that I can hear the thoughts and I can still choose the next healthful thing, so I think that that's so important. And one of the greatest joys of the work that I've done, and this October is going to be 20 years that I started the Alliance, and never in a million years thought that I would ever be here in my life, let alone in my journey, is just the beautiful gift of recovery, and that it's ever moving and ever changing and ever happening. I think one of like my most full circle times was before we did our first virtual friends and family check-ins. I got the wedding invitation for Cherie's daughter, who is so important to me, and it fills my heart in so many ways. And like, I had this moment, and I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this, but like going back to, when Cherie called me at like 11 o'clock at night, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she said, Johanna, you know, Bailey needs more treatment. She needs more help. And I just remember hearing the tone of her voice, and like, if anybody knows Cherie, they know that you will be called woman. That's what she does. And she's like, woman, we need to do something now. We need to do something fast. And then to watch all those steps go into play, you know, Cherie did, you know, FBT, and then did residential care, and then just seeing, you know, her daughter recover, and the fact that she became like a family nurse practitioner, and that she's marrying the love of her life, to me gives me the fuel to keep on going every single day. And so I really want to share with family members that are out there, you know, I don't consider myself a unicorn, even though I really love unicorns and they are my spirit animal, that there are a lot of people out there that can and do recover. So please know that you're not in this journey alone. There's amazing treatment professionals out there. There's amazing communities out there. Your loved one did not choose to develop this eating disorder. This is not something that you did wrong. This is not something that they did wrong. This is something that happened to them, and you deserve, as they deserve, to have the support that they need to recover through this journey. So my closing question to you is, how do I take care of myself through this? It seems like there's never enough time for me, and all I have to worry about is keeping my loved one alive. How do I maneuver this? So Bonnie, if you want to start by that question, and then Cherie.
Yeah, the metaphor of you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child or your loved one is so true. If you are not going in strong, you're bound to, you know, get even more pain from the situation. So everybody who supports an eating disorder deserves their own support. In fact, in the United Kingdom, there's actually a law that says that caregivers are entitled to support, and
Wow.
yes, and that they cannot be blocked by their loved one. As you know, that oftentimes adults will try to say you can't have any part of this. Well, it affects the whole family, or takes a village, as we have on the screen now. So you need your own support, and reach out for your own support. I think that I had read there was a comment or a question about, well, what if my person doesn't let me even talk about it with other people? Well, that's a problem. You know, you can like keep confidentiality of certain specifics, but maybe talking with your individual, your person who's struggling with the eating disorder, that you need to process your own emotions too, and they can't be that support for you. So whether it's a friend, or you have your own therapist, or it's your partner, make sure that you're aware of your own emotional process through this. Allow yourself some grace. You're not supposed to be getting it 100% perfect. And we all, even myself as a professional who's been in the business for a long time, I can get into a vortex and I say the wrong things and I do the wrong thing. It's how to then go forward after that and say, hey, you know, I realized I didn't do that great, and I still care about you. So how can we keep working on this together?
So true. That's amazing. Cherie?
Well, I mean, as you know, initially I did it all wrong. I will say I was so focused on getting her the care and support that she deserved. I was not breathing myself. And, you know, if you're not breathing, you cannot provide oxygen to your loved one. And, you know, I was an example initially of what not to do. I started experiencing stress, you know, just kept attributing it to everything that was happening. And as you know, I had a cardiac event and a 13-hour open heart surgery as a result of the stress of navigating this journey without taking care of me. And you are an essential piece of the equation. If you're not breathing, you cannot help your loved one. And we have to role model for our loved ones what we expect them to do. And we cannot ask them to take care of themselves, to get therapy, to get support, to nourish, if we're not doing that ourselves. And so I learned that, you know, I recommend to most families, get a family therapist, you know, get someone to help you navigate, to teach you boundaries, to keep you breathing, you know, find the things you love and take care of you. You have to take care of you. Yeah. Because if you're not here, who's going to take care of your loved one?
I have to tell you that the thing that just kept on resonating over and over again to me is, like you sharing, at first you did it all wrong, and we've had some comments about people also doing it wrong, is give yourself grace through this, because I'm pretty sure, I mean, definitely when I had my daughter, I never got a booklet that said, in case your child has an eating disorder, use this, So I think definitely, leaning into grace and giving yourself that space. And one thing that just continuously just comes back to mind is you cannot give from an empty cup. And I have to tell you, as a loved one that's helping someone navigate this journey to recovery, you have to have a full cup. You have to be able to hold that person up. So definitely acknowledging that you're not going to be perfect all the time. Like, Bonnie, I'm with you. Like, I've had moments where like I have this out of body experience hearing myself when I'm dealing with a loved one that's experiencing an eating disorder. I'm like, who the hell was that just said the most wrong thing you should ever say to anybody? And it's because you love someone so much that you'll do anything, right? So giving yourself an opportunity to have that grace, to being kind with yourself, the same things that we tell our loved ones, we have to do for ourselves. Keep that in mind. I could honestly talk to you guys the entire day. My heart is so full right now. I can't thank you guys enough. I do want to just share a few upcoming events. We have a bunch of other Facebook Lives and Instagram Lives coming up this week and then the next couple weeks. For those loved ones that are listening into this call, the Alliance does have our friends and family support groups. We are all virtual now because of the virus. They meet at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday evenings. If you head over to the Alliance's Facebook page, you can just have the links to sign up. If you have loved ones that are experiencing eating disorders that are 18 and older, they're more than welcome to join us on Monday evenings at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time as well. We've had now we've had over 650 people attend our check-in since the virus has started. We are here for you. We're here to navigate. I know Eating Recovery Center has a plethora of support services as well. You are still admitting for all levels of care, including, in-person and virtual PHP, IOP. Please make sure to check out their Facebook page. And of course, if you are a loved one of someone that's navigating the journey to recovery, please check out Mom to Mom's Facebook group. I can't say enough about the support services on the Eating Disorder Family Support Network. The Alliance is here to support you. Please give us a call if there's anything that we can do. Bonnie, Cherie, thank you so much for taking your Sunday afternoon. For everyone who's watched us today, thank you so much for taking the time. As someone that's lived the journey, I can't say enough about loved ones that show up. You have no idea the impact it can make in your loved one's life. So I'm sending you guys virtual hugs. Bonnie, Cherie, thank you guys so much. Big hugs. Have a great day, guys. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.